Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the other side of medicine. I'm Dr. Christosik, and tonight we're going to be talking about something that affects millions of Americans, and they are doing something that they don't think twice about, but it's affecting their blood vessels, clogging their arteries, and causing strokes. Strokes, one of the biggest causes of death in the United States and around the world. And the thing that I'm going to talk about tonight will surprise some people, but other people will say, yeah, I knew some of those things, but you'll learn some things tonight that you may never heard about. So don't miss this episode. In the topic of this evening, we're going to be diving deep into how this culprit, this number one cause of millions of Americans dying from strokes, is something that you could change just by becoming educated and learning about the dangers of this hazard that sits on the plates of many people, especially at lunchtime or in their lunch boxes. So we've got to realize that every 40 seconds, someone in America has a stroke. Every 3 minutes, someone dies from one. That's shocking. So pay attention to what I'll be talking about tonight because that's nearly 800,000 lives. That's nearly 1 million lives that are shattered each year. Mothers and fathers and grandparents, many who are looking forward to the golden years of retirement, only have their lives stolen by a thief that strikes without warning. And it's really sad because even younger people today are having strokes and heart attacks, and they're actually causing them by what's on their plates. So imagine spending a lifetime working hard, dreaming of the day you're going to be able to travel and garden and hold your grandchildren's hand, go on vacation with them, but instead you are paralyzed. You've lost your speech, or worse yet, you've had an early death. And here's the shocker, one of the biggest and silent triggers that might be sitting right between the two slices of your bread and your lunchbox. I'm talking about processed lunch meats that people have every day in their lunch boxes, in their sandwiches in restaurants, in their homes. And these processed meats are causing millions of people to have clogged arteries. Well, sounds crazy? Well, maybe, but it's time to wake up. And the questions, what's on your plate? And in today's episode, I'm going to expose the hidden threat that may be sabotaging your health and what you can do to protect yourself, to protect your loved ones. So, the retirement dreams that you've had, they all depend on what we'll be talking about tonight. So, if you've never listened to our podcast, well, I want to thank you for joining me. But for the next half hour to 45 minutes, we're going to be diving deep into one of the most dangerous yet overlooked threats to our health, processed lunch meats. Now, I know that, again, that might sound pretty extreme, but stick with me because by the end of this talk, by the end of this episode, you're going to understand how these convenient foods are robbing us of our health, clogging our arteries, and even causing strokes. The number one cause of death worldwide, especially here in the United States. So let's dive right in and start with this sobering reality. Strokes and cardiovascular disease are killing more people than all cancers combined. Now that's staggering. And yet, while we talk about exercise and lowering cholesterol and reducing sodium in our diet, most people and most doctors never talk about the foods hiding on their plates in the middle of that sandwich, right before their very eyes. Particularly, again, your doctor is not talking about processed lunch meats. They're talking about how to take medications, and that's what they primarily focus on. But yet, processed meats like ham and turkey and bologna and salami and beef. They're loaded with harmful chemicals and compounds that silently damage your blood vessels that get clogged up with plaque. They may look harmless on your plate, but inside your body, those lunch meats are actually setting up a tiny, like a time bomb in your body, setting up chain reactions that could lead to the plaque buildup, high blood pressure, and then eventually a stroke. So let's break it down. First, what exactly are these processed meats? Well, they're meats that have been preserved through smoking, curing, salting, and adding other chemical preservatives. And again, when you hear about smoking and putting salt on it, doesn't sound too bad, but the chemicals inside of these lunch meats are devastating to the body. They use preservative methods that introduce toxic compounds inside the body, which would never be there if you were eating fresh, just regular meats that you would find in the supermarket. Basically, if you would want to eat those meats, I would suggest getting organic, pasture raised meats and pasture raised chickens and eggs and those types of things. And but the number one culprit in those harmful processed lunch meats is sodium nitrate and sodium nitrite. These compounds are added to meat to preserve color and to prevent bacterial growth because they sit on the shelf so long, but inside your body, they become something far more devastating. They cause the body to have a chemical reaction and they release nitrosamines. Nitrosamines. These are compounds that are highly carcinogenic and they damage your DNA, they inflame your arteries, and they suppress. That's the key. They suppress your body's ability to release nitric oxide. Well, let's talk about that for a minute. What is nitric oxide? Well, that's actually a natural compound that your body produces, and it's really a big deal. It's a miracle molecule that keeps your blood vessels, open and flexible, and it reduces that blood pressure and improves circulation, prevents arteries from becoming clogged. Prevents that clot formation. And, it works like a WD-40 for your arteries. But when you eat processed meats regularly, the nitrates and the nitrites, they actually inhibit the enzymes in your body that uses the enzymes. Your body uses those enzymes to produce the nitric oxide, which keeps those blood vessels open up. In simple terms, your arteries stiffen up, they get inflamed, and they start to clog up. And let me bring some of the science into this because this is science-based natural medicine that we talk about here on the other side of medicine. Back in 2010, there was a major meta-analysis study. Now, when you talk about a meta-analysis, what does that mean? Well, it's a study that has combined maybe 10 or 20 or 30 different studies in one, and it was actually reported in the Journal of Circulation. And they found that eating just 50 grams of processed meat per day, that's just about 2 slices of deli meat, ham or a hot dog, they increase your risk for heart attacks or strokes, coronary artery disease by 42%, and they increase your risk for stroke by a whopping 20%. That's amazing. 20% increased risk for stroke just by having a hot dog maybe a couple times a week or some lunch meat. And that's not all. Back in 2017, researchers, they found in the Journal of Clinical Hypertension, again, that's a major journal for heart disease, they found that nitrate preservatives not only raise blood pressure, but they also reduce the production of that very, very valuable molecule called nitric oxide we talked about a few minutes ago. This is double whammy, my friends. High blood pressure and stiff arteries, clogged arteries, adding inflammation to the mix. you've got a perfect storm for a stroke. Now, another study back in 2013 at the infamous Harvard University, and it was published in the journal Circulation, they found that people who ate the most processed meats had a whopping 72% higher risk of dying from cardiovascular disease. That's heart attacks and strokes again. Let that sink into your mind for a minute. 72% higher risk of dying from the cardiovascular disease. And finally, the massive EPIC study, which followed over 500,000 people across 10 countries in Europe, they found a strong, consistent link between the processed meat consumption and premature death from heart attacks and strokes. So you see, the science is clear. But let me ask you, how many times have you or someone that you know that you love, or someone, a friend of yours, have picked up a sandwich, maybe at a restaurant for lunch, or maybe they took it in their lunchbox, maybe a turkey club sandwich or a ham and cheese sandwich, or maybe at the Subway foot long sandwich, and they're adding those processed meats in there. And you think that you're making a healthy choice by going to a place like maybe Subway or a sub shop, but you're getting those meats, those processed meats. And then, of course, you're getting fries. The deep fried foods and the high temperature of those oils, they add more complications to damaging your blood vessels. But, if you look at it on the surface, you're ingesting chemical preservatives that damage your arteries and bring you one step closer to a stroke. That's something to really ponder, my friends. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, Dr. Christosik, I buy organic lunch meats. And they say no nitrates added to them. Well, isn't that safe? Well, unfortunately, my friend, no, because most of those nitrate-free products, well, they use things like celery powder, and then they concentrate them, and then they actually put a naturally high amount of nitrates just from the celery powder by concentrating, which wouldn't normally do, inside of the lunch meats. And once inside the body, these nitrates have just the same effect like the synthetic ones do. And the end results, the same thing is they block nitric oxide. Again, that molecule that helps to open up the arteries and to make sure they don't get clogged. But you're going to get the same damage. You're going to get the same arterial damage. It's just a game of semantics. It's not safe, my friends. But don't worry, I'm not going to just stop right here to scare you. I'm really here every single week to empower you. You see, it's all about teaching you what you can do to make lifestyle changes, to make modifications, to protect yourself and your family from strokes and heart disease and all kinds of other kinds of health problems. And I'm going to give you tonight 5 steps. 5 steps you can do starting right now, starting today. And number 1, eliminate those processed meats from your diet, my friend. No more ham, salami, and pepperoni that's processed in the packages and deli meats. If it has a shelf life of more than a week, it's probably toxic. It's going to be toxic to your body. So stay away from those processed lunch meats. Eat fresh, natural, pasture-raised, beef or pasture-raised chickens or, turkey or whatever, and get it fresh. But again, you know how I always talk about eating those things in minimal quantities. Now, if you have a sandwich that's loaded with fresh fruits and vegetables, you're eating on your plate, you have the fresh fruits and vegetables, and on that sandwich, you've got some lettuce and tomatoes and some onions and some fermented pickles. That's going to be fine because you're loading it up with a lot of the fiber-rich foods, and you're just putting a little bit of that meat in there. That's fine. That's how the Mediterranean people eat the meat. Very little of the meat, but a lot of veggies. And then, have a dessert with some yogurt, some dairy-free, unsweetened yogurt with some fresh fruit in there. And that's going to be a really good, powerful meal to help you to prevent strokes, to improve your energy levels and to keep your mind sharp. And so you don't end up having those strokes again. And number two, eat foods that promote nitric oxide production. Remember that compound that relaxes the blood vessels, opens them up, and allows that blood circulation to flow freely. Things like beets and arugula and spinach and garlic and watermelon. All these foods naturally boost your body's production of nitric oxide. Again, these are your arteries' best friends. And number three, choose unprocessed fresh proteins. Again, cook your own meats. Use pasture-raised poultry and grass-fed beef and wild-caught fish. Or you could use also plant proteins like lentils and beans. You could have you know uh, foods for lunch that are burritos. Burritos are a delicious high protein meal. They have beans and or legumes in there, and they taste delicious. So you don't always have to have the meats in your meal. Again, eat a Mediterranean type of diet where they, again, in the blue zones, eat very minimal amounts of meat. Mainly, they eat a plant-based diet, rich in those fruits and vegetables and beans and legumes and nuts and seeds. They're going to help to make sure that you don't end up with a stroke or a heart attack. And number four, adopt an anti-inflammatory diet. Now, remember, my friends, inflammation. I've talked about this many times. Inflammation is the number one cause of almost every disease you can imagine, and it's the number one silent killer. And processed meats fuel it. While on the other hand, when you eat beans and when you eat whole grains and lentils and legumes, and you eat nuts and seeds and fruits and vegetables, and you get healthy fats, get the fats from, like, especially the cold water fish like wild caught salmon or sardines, and eating things like tuna or larger fish that are, again, higher in things like mercury. So only have those maybe a one can of tuna a week. That would be fine. And eating the carbs from heaven. That's the fresh fruits and vegetables and all the other things that I talked about that are high in fiber. The carbs from heaven. And stay away from the carbs from hell, the processed foods that turn into sugar and raise your blood sugar levels. And again, they contribute to that plaque formation and also that belly fat. That fat around your belly is the worst type because that collects around your organs. That's not good at all. So, number five, move your body and manage stress. Exercise is a key factor to helping to keep those arteries open by producing nitric oxide naturally. And again, laughter is good medicine too. And so does prayer help and meditation and having a mindset of gratitude. Your mindset is a key factor. And I try to teach people have an attitude of gratitude. Your mindset really matters. And so don't walk around with a negative, down, you know, negative thinking. So many people do. I have friends who walk around who complain all the time, and they look at the dark side of things, and they're always looking for something that is negative as opposed to looking at the positive aspects of life. There's always something good you can find, even in something that doesn't look good. You could always find a way to make a terrible situation into a situation that looks better by trying to maybe help somebody, trying to lift somebody up in that situation. It's always some way to turn a negative into a positive. Your lifestyle matters, my friend, as much as the choices you make at lunchtime or dinner time or any time during the day. So, with these principles, I've helped thousands of people reclaim their health, to overcome high blood pressure, elevated cholesterol, and other risk factors for cardiovascular disease by making these lifestyle changes. And I've done it one patient at a time, lowering blood pressure, helping to lower their blood sugar levels. Because when you have high blood sugar levels and you increase that risk for insulin resistance, you increase your risk for diabetes, and that again could lead to heart attacks and strokes as well. You know, the people I've helped, it only takes a short while, just 3 months, 3 months, and we change their life so they can get off of medications and start living an independently healthy life. So don't wait another minute to avoid a stroke. Switch to real food. Ditch the processed meats. Get rid of them completely. Let me ask you this. Is that sandwich worth the risk? Is 5 minutes of the flavor worth a lifetime of pain, medication, or even early death? You want to be able to go in those retirement years and be able to enjoy them with your grandchildren and your family and friends. And you don't have to be a statistic. Again, close to 1 million people are dying every single year, suffering from strokes. You can take charge of your health. Start today, one bite at a time, one decision at a time, one mindful thought at a time. Your body's designed to heal itself, but only if you stop poisoning it. Remember, every meal is a choice. Food is the best medicine. Every bite that you take is a vote for either health or for disease. Are you voting for health or are you voting for disease? Well, my friends, I really hope that tonight that what I shared with you will get you thinking in the direction of what you can do to make better choices. And it doesn't have to mean that you change overnight. No, you don't have to do that. Now you may be disciplined enough to do that, and I applaud you if you can, but don't feel bad if you can't make a disciplined change overnight. Make small changes. Instead of having the processed lunch meats 3 or 4 times a week, excuse me, do it once a week. Make that your first goal. Or maybe do it twice a week. Take small steps and then reach that goal and then make another goal for yourself. One step at a time, one goal at a time. Achieve the goal that you set. No matter how small that is, if you're moving in the right direction, that's a good thing. So I encourage you, don't fall into the trap of thinking that you can't make these changes. It's important to be around other people who are trying to make changes themselves. So I encourage you to join my Gut 911 RX community, the Gut 911 prescription community. Go to my website, theothersideofmedicine.com. We'll put links for you to be able to get into the community. We're getting close to that 100 mark of having 100 members inside of our group. And I don't want you to miss out on getting that free lifetime access. We only have maybe about 7 or 8 slots left. You get free access because after we reach 100 people, I'm going to start charging a small fee, but still it's going to be about less than $20 a month. But my friends, you take advantage of it now, you can jump in for a lifetime access for free and be around other people just like you who are encouraging each other, supporting each other, helping each other, learning from each other, and from me, and getting the free resources that I have available inside the community. So, my friend, take advantage of these things. Listen to my social media. 2 times a day, I post videos educating you. And in my Gut 911 prescription community, I send you emails with health information that's not available to other people, just for those people in the community. Take advantage of these things. Listen to my podcast where I bring in guests. We're going to have a stellar list of guests coming up here in the next several months. And I want you to learn from these people and myself how to take a proactive role in your health, how to take advantage of the healing power that God has placed inside the body. Don't hesitate. Don't wait. Join our community. Be around other people who can help and aid you in your journey. If it wasn't for people in a community like my Gut 911 prescription community, when I first got introduced to natural healthcare and natural medicine, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be a doctor because I was encouraged by a group of people that we met once a week and were taught by a gentleman who was a professor at a local college. And this gentleman, he himself had had a stroke in his 50s, and he was a farmer, a dairy farmer, and he had a couple hundred a head of cows that he was using the milk, and he found out that the milk and the beef and the foods that people were eating were killing themselves, especially the processed foods. And so he decided to change his life. He had arthritis so bad, along with his stroke that he had. He had arthritis so bad he couldn't even lift up his arm to comb his hair. But he turned his life around, learned about natural medicine. His arthritis withered away, and he was active into his 90s. So you could do the same. And I encourage you, take one step at a time, one day at a time. Learn what you can do, take a proactive role, and unleash the healing power of your body's own capacity to heal itself. Well, until next week, my friend, tell your family and friends about us. Until then, goodbye to illness and hello to wellness. That's my motto for you and your family and your loved one. So here's to your health.